Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Like Queen Lisa, and today we are going to learn a little bit more about the ingredients in New Eden and the benefits of having complete nutrition and your diet and what that can do for you. And we have Dr. Reg McDaniel with us after the video. So if you guys have questions, put those in the comments in the live chat in all caps. I'll be keeping track of all those, and I will follow up with Dr. Reg McDaniel right after this.
Request that we start with the ingredients that are in the current more comprehensive nutritional formulation called New Eden. There are approximately 14 ingredients, and each one has a little statement on the web, which is www.wellnessquest.org. You can click on a brief statement about the ingredient, but in this session, we will talk about the most important ingredient, which is the active ingredient isolated from the aloe vera leaf gel. Previously, I've tried to give you two introductions to this technology that's as old as life. I've tried to get across to you that I didn't discover or develop anything new. In fact, aloe plants were in the war train of Alexander the Great. It's mentioned in papyruses of Egypt. It has over a 5,000-year history of being used to support health and healing. Then I realized I've been doing this for years, and there's so many words and terminologies that are in Greek or Latin that we don't use anymore in common talking, that I tried to go back and point out that the ancient Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament have verses that show that 5,000 years ago and over 2,000 years ago, this technology was recognized. Then I have sought to share with you pilot studies and surveys by independent outside authorities that support what we're talking about, that there is modern science, biochemistry to support these ancient insights of wisdom that came from empirical observations. I will get into the aloe thing, but I also make a point that in the past, I always had on a suit and either a bow tie or straight tie, trying to look professional and like an expert. But during this pandemic, I think the general public has been made aware of what fools experts in science and medicine made of themselves in regard to the China virus and its prevention and treatment, the controversy over isolation and mask wearing on people that don't have any symptoms, and then thousands of scientists have signed a petition against the politicalization of science and medicine, particularly in regard to man-made climate change. They ignore certain information that doesn't support the political viewpoint that people had. There was once a time, even during my lifetime, that it seemed like science was a search for the truth. Now it seems to be more a effort to try to convince people of certain people's opinions. With this, I want to go to the PowerPoint of the decade, at least, that was spent by a public corporation that was formed called Carrington Laboratories. And with that, we will go to the first PowerPoint slides. I'd like to say that I realize that people listening to these segments don't want to be molecular biologists or biochemists or geneticists, so I attempt to the best of my ability to simplify things. Now, Carrington Laboratories was founded in the 1980s as a public corporation, and from investors, they raised $20 million for research funds to develop a new antiviral pharmaceutical agent with the FDA against the AIDS virus. A previous small company founded by an individual that some people listening may be aware of. He was an entrepreneur that established several different companies. His name was Clinton Howard. He came to my office in August 1985 and asked me to support this new company that he had made. And what he wanted me to do, and I was with him from 1985 to 1994, was to interpret scientific terminology from various institutions that were doing research work on contract for Carrington Laboratories. And the non-scientists in the company didn't understand all the information that was coming to them that the FDA required. Number two, I was to project potential human drug benefits from the basic science experiments that were flowing into Carrington from 11 different institutions. Also, at a clinic that I had, conducted 3 pilot AIDS studies under FDA guidelines in 45 patients, divided into 3 pilot programs. One was the exploratory, 2 the validation of the first 15 patients, and then the final study was taking data from the previous 2 studies and predicting which patients would and would not respond to the active ingredient from aloe plant, which is what we're focusing on in this presentation, is the most important ingredient in the current New Eden formulation. What did I actually do? As I pointed out, I didn't discover or come up with anything new, but after doing the 45 patients, I made what I think a very simple statement. It's not generally known of all the complications that AIDS patients get when their immune systems are knocked out. But when we added the aloe, the active ingredient, all these problems corrected and went back to the normal status. And my statement was, I wonder what would happen if someone didn't have AIDS and all medical efforts had failed and you tried this active ingredient from the aloe plant with these patients. And of course, we were astounded that virtually every patient moved toward the normal zone. Number two, I recognized and was able to prove scientifically that the active ingredient from the aloe plant generated millions of adult stem cells that could migrate into the tissues, transform, and restore function and structural activity within the human body. Also, it was recognized, I'll show you briefly, that the active ingredient that was found to be aloe acetylated Manos, or for short ACE-mannan, is a model for all nutrients that are required by the genes in cellular synthesis to make bioactive molecules. Now we'll move to the second slide. I show this slide for the 11 institutions that were working for Carrington Laboratories with $20 million of research funds. The biggest group was Texas A&M University College of Veterinary Medicine. You can see all the professionals there. Very important, down next to the bottom was Southern Research Institute. Dr. Jasbir Cologne, she had worked for the NIH, and her story alone was some of the most sophisticated viral research work to prove the mechanism of action with adding the ACE-man into the human diet. But I have sat down and figured it's about 50 professionals from these 11 different institutions I worked with, and I learned something from virtually every one of them. I didn't learn everything they know, of course, but just that relates to this project. And they represent over 200 professional years of instruction and training at the PhD and the MD and other professional titles beyond college education. So this is quite a group of knowledge. I want to again tell you that the simplest aspect of what we're talking about in nutrition is you can relate it to a facility a few blocks from where I'm sitting right now. General Motors has an assembly line. It takes up about a block, and rail cars and trucks bring in parts. They have inside the assembly line the plans that engineers have put together of how to put these parts together. And if everything is there, you'll have a vehicle that comes out that not only looks right, but will function right. That's kind of how the cells in our body work. Each cell is in fact an ultra micro factory with an assembly line in it that I'll show you a cartoon of it. And through diet, we begin to, in our mouth, chew up food. It's dissolved in saliva or water, and it's absorbed by the intestine into the serum phase of the blood, and the heart pumps these nutrient molecules, or shall we say parts, around to the assembly lines that are in each cell. And it's a most incredible little factory because there are approximately 30,000 genes, and depending on which gene is activated, the cells have the knowledge from programming in DNA to put amino acids, fatty acids, monosaccharides or sugar units from the carbohydrate family, vitamins and minerals, elements, and critical phytonutrients from plants to make structure and function bioactive compounds to run the biochemistry of life. So that's what this all simplified is doing, but you have to look under the microscope to even see these cells. And you have to have electron microscopy up to about 100,000 magnification, that where it looks like inside the cell, which is to the left here is a standard looking model, that inside by electron microscopy, there's 1, 2, 3 major steps. That's called the ribosome, then moves to the endoplasmic reticulum, and then finally to the Golgi, which is the finishing off. They're down at the bottom of the cartoon to make all the structure and function molecules of the body from nutrient. Now, this paper was a review paper with over 300 citations of previous published articles that define this assembly line that is in each cell. And right in the middle of this, you'll see some little round structures. And the reason I was so electrified by finding this paper that was published in 1985 is this article focuses upon the role of Manos in cellular synthesis. And the reason that was so exciting is that we had found out in the aloe leaf gel, the principal sugar unit or monosaccharide was Manos. And what this shows you in this paper outlines is that in the endoplasmic reticulum, the second step in cellular synthesis after the amino acids are hooked together to make to start proteins, which is the short chain peptide, that in the endoplasmic reticulum, 9 molecules of the principal ingredient in aloe leaf gel are organized into 3 chains to make a domain. And this domain, you can see on the surface of the cell, looks like little pitchforks all over it. There are so many of them on every cell that if all of them were there, it'd be like shag carpet. You couldn't see them. But this domain is for cell-to-cell communication and instructions. We have trillions of cells in the human body, but they must work together in harmony. And this domain, made from the most active ingredient from the aloe, makes this site for cell-to-cell communication so that they all work together. And this is why it was such a powerful found. Before we leave this center of biochemistry of the Manos was finally recognized that this is how every nutrient, whether it be amino acid, fatty acid, carbohydrate, or the other nutrient molecules, are used on the assembly line under the instructions that are in the nucleic acid or DNA to make all the structure functions of the body. So this graph is more important than just the role of the aloe that we're focusing on today and acetylated mannose. This is just why it's so powerful for cell-to-cell communication, but it's also a model for how all nutrients are utilized in the biochemistry of life. Now, the chief medical officer for Carrington Laboratories was PhD Dr. Bill McAnally, and he had written the book, The Science Behind Aloe, and this is what the book looks like. It has 6 authors, and very important, it points out that there are major additional molecules inside the aloe leaf gel that are approximately 200 metabolic ingredients. The original patents of Carrington Laboratories was done with ethyl alcohol processing to concentrate the solids in the aloe leaf gel. And it should be pointed out that aloe leaf gel is about 98 to 99% water and only 1 to 2%, depending on the rainfall and water supply, 1 to 2% solids. And this is where the Manos is. It's so important in supporting the body's biochemistry. With the alcohol processing in this book, over these 200 aloe metabolic products are lost in the alcohol, but the current 2000 plus processing is totally different. Alcohol is not used. Only water is reduced from the gel, and all these 200 intermediate metabolic products of the cell of the aloe are retained. And what is not generally recognized is that there are multiple biochemical pathways and cascades in plant cells and in animal cells that are very similar, if not identical. And this is one of the reasons that with the new year 2000 plus processing, markedly improved clinical responses were made. Now, this is what the plant looks like. It's Aloe barbarensis Miller, and it's one used commercially over the countries, though there are over 200 species of aloe. And this Aloe barbarensis Miller has a history that goes back that can be documented over 5,000 years, that the gel has been used to support healing and good health. Now, this is the Manos molecule, and at the time of the early 80s, the sensitivity of the laboratory instruments was that we thought that the Manos was the carbohydrate in the gel. However, it was with improved scientific instruments and procedures. It is known that there are approximately 10 monosaccharides. Here you can see glucose, galactose, and mannose are the principal ones. And depending on the assay and the source, the mannose is the highest percentage of the monosaccharides or sugars. And we have a round circle pointed there with the red on it to point out that in the mannose, this hydroxy group, OH, is inside the ring, whereas in glucose is outside the ring. And when it's outside the ring, it's used primarily for power. The glucose is a source for energy, whereas when the OH is inside the ring, as in mannose, it's used for metabolism and support the cellular synthesis of the body. Now, more recent methodology shows that mannose can be up to 50%, and then you have the glucose and the galacturic acid, 26%, and then other sugars that are lower percentages. These sugars are in the cell wall of all plants, and the percentages of each one of them with certain alkaloids that the plant makes, kind of like glue or cement between the chains of carbohydrate sugars, determines whether we eat the plant raw, or we have to cook it to get it where we can eat it, or whether it's used for making paper or even lumber to build structures, is the difference of ratios of these different sugars in the cell wall of plants. So this is very important basic biochemistry. Now, I mentioned there were other substances other than the mannose, and this is just a page from Dr. McAnally's book, where you have the amino acids that are in the gel in small amount, that the aloe bitters that are significant, and it's the molecule in the plant that retards insects. They say a mosquito that knows what it's doing won't even fly into an aloe field because of these bitters, the anthraquinones that are in the air. And in the processing, you want to get rid of these. Then it has the carbohydrates that are in the aloe gel, and then the enzymes that the plant biochemistry utilizes these enzymes to produce the structure and the function of the plant. Then in addition, there are integrated inorganic elements that are listed there, from calcium to zinc. And then there are lipids, there are plant steroids and triglycerides. And then there are vitamins. Well, in the original Carrington patents, all of these were lost in alcohol, but the current 2000 plus processing retains all of these. And this is why, in my judgment, we get so much better responses to people that have deviations from normal in their health. We don't use disease terms or syndromes, because it's against the law in the United States to use a natural product or a nutrient to improve health. The law is that only a government-approved drug can represent or claim to treat, cure, mitigate, or correct an abnormal health condition. Well, all we do through nutrition is support the normal biochemistry, the normal DNA programming, the normal production of bioactive molecules that provide the normal structure and the normal function of the human body. So all we do is support normal biochemistry and physiology of the human body by supporting nutrition. And this is just some of the extra molecules that current dietary supplement, because very importantly, there are many sources for processing of aloe, and on the label they all say aloe leaf gel powder, but there's all manner of differences and trace toxic substances that can be in various aloe powders. And this is the purest, most potent or protective that we're using in the current formulation. Now, this is the patent that was filed for the acetylated Manos or ace-mannan. And you see there that the company chief science officer, Dr. McNally, is listed as number 1. And then from Texas A&M, we had a veterinarian. And then I was involved in this, and this is a patent number and the date it was granted, and it is expired. And the next slide will show you the very major difference between the patent office and the FDA, both government institutions or agencies. But number 1, it was activation, induction, enhancement of the cascade for inflammatory response, which is interleukin-1 and prostaglandins that turn on body's host defense against all infections. In addition, which it modulates the immune system. If the immune system is overactive, it will bring it down. If it's underactive, it will increase it. There's well-proven enhanced wound healing with less scarring and infections, that it, when present with an adjuvant, it acts as an adjuvant systemic to make vaccines work better, higher antibody levels. It was found to have not only general antiviral activity, but activity against bacteria, fungus, and the highest level was even malaria of chronic nature in children in Africa, as they quit having periodic fever, chills, red cell destruction. And before this activity, I had no idea that the World Health Organization points out that the number 1 cause of death of children on planet Earth is chronic malaria. Well, this molecule from the aloe plant boosted the body's host defenses against all infectious agents, not only the virus. It was also found in research that we'll eventually possibly get into that the heightening of the body's ability to fight infections, that the immune system can tell the very subtle difference between a totally normal cell and that of a mutated cell that can cause various malignancies and leukemia, lymphoma. And this was first noted in the AIDS patients, where their immune system was knocked out. And as a pathologist, it blew me away when the immune system was restored in the AIDS patients by giving the acetylated Manos or ace-mannan, and not only leukemia, but lymphoma and Kaplan sarcoma, 3 different cell lines of tumor went away. And of course, the AIDS patients improved, and then there were conditions like ulcerative colitis, multiple sclerosis, various neuralgias, the most common from diabetes of the chronic nature. And then the last one, multiple bacterial and parasitic infections, because host defense against all infection agents were boosted by this molecule that 9 molecules are used in 3 chains to make the domain for cell-to-cell harmony and cooperation in the body. And when the cells all cooperate, you get these patented activities. And the big difference between the patent office and the FDA is that the patent office only requires one documented case, and that was what Carrington wanted me to do in my facilities at Dallas Fort Worth Medical Center. And we found these cases, and this is the patent. However, the FDA requires very sophisticated studies with controls and on about the requirements at the FDA. Now, while I was medical director for a international dietary supplement company, they were all over North and South and Central America. And for this company, I even traveled to 10 foreign nations. And again, in various locations, patients that did not know each other had clinical responses that are called anecdotal. But it's a huge anecdotal experiments. And I went to from Carrington Laboratories for a decade virtually to this company that was known as Manitech from 1994 to 2004, another virtually a decade. And this was such a powerful benefit to patients to restore normal physiology and biochemistry that accumulated from the year that the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act was passed in 1994 and started the dietary supplement industry, that this company did over $1 billion in accumulated sales because it worked. One of the most important things is this active ingredient that's the number one in New Eden, is that every abnormal health condition that it was used, any deviation from normal, whether it was physical, mental, or emotional, there was some response of improvement. I frequently tell people that I can't tell you this will help you. I can tell you it has helped many others much like you. The only thing that I have found is 100% is death, taxes, and scoundrels will run for public office and get elected. That is 100%. Well, all these improved functions was medical scientific heresy. I did not really realize it before this experience that medicine is organized, and the FDA also, one drug, one disease. We don't use psychotropic drugs for mental aberrations to treat cancer. We don't use cancer drugs to treat infections, and we don't use antibiotics for these other conditions. One drug type, one disease. Well, in the wisdom of our government, in 1994, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was passed. It's known as DSHEA. Very importantly, in the preamble, which I had to be informed is not part of the law, it's just a statement of why this was taken under consideration and the hearings were held. The first paragraph says a statement of truth. It states, and I paraphrase, that science and medicine has shown that optimal nutrition is essential for 1, good health, 2, to prevent disease, and 3, to restore health. You might easily say, well, what more would you want from nutrition? Well, you would like this statement to be part of the law and not just in the preamble as the answer to that question. It is not law because in the labeling section of this law, again, I paraphrase, it says that only FDA approved drug can claim or represent to treat, cure, mitigate, or correct an abnormal health condition. So I really emphasize we are not treating or curing disease. All we're doing is nutritionally supporting the normal biochemistry and physiology of the human body. Very important. Now, down at the University of Texas at Austin for about 40 years was a very important biochemist by the name of Roger J. Williams. This is one of his 12 books where he tries to write for the person on the street to be informed about just how wonderful our body is made. And you can read this and understand a lot about the importance of nutrition, which is what he, as a biochemist, found out. And he was active in the vitamin discovery, particularly pantothenic acid. I understand he named it. And at a time when people were dying in their 50s to 70 years old, Dr. Williams, with his knowledge applied to himself, lived to his 90s. And I never knew him, but I have read his books, and his most important book was published in 1971. It's called Nutrition Against Disease. And we will end with a statement from that book. But I would like to summarize nutritional physiology, which is a functional activity within the anatomy of our body. There is complex central nervous system interaction with the GI tract in regard that our image of food and our appetite is largely influenced by the function of the brain, which is the mind, and what you like and what you want. The nutrition starts with mastication, where your teeth, pardon me, and oral cavity mixes water or saliva from the salivary glands with enzymes in them, particularly to begin to work on the sugars, complex ones, and get the food particles small mixed with water. Then gastric acid and enzymes begin to be added in the stomach as the large masses of food are made smaller. And then by propulsion, the material inside the GI tract, which is really not inside the body, but inside the tube of the gastrointestinal tract, goes down to the intestinal enzymes, and where proteins, long chains of amino acids, are broken down to individual amino acids that can be dissolved in fluid. And the fats that you can see on the steak are reduced by these enzymes and mastication and activity to fatty acids. The long carbohydrate chains are reduced to monosaccharides or sugars. And in the small bowel, the mucosa is physically organized that these molecules are absorbed in the fluid phase and taken into the serum of the blood, and the heart pumps the blood around with the red cells suspended into the serum, and also these nutrient molecules in the serum to smaller and smaller arterial vessels down to the capillaries that encircle the cells, and the nutrient molecules diffuse into the cell. They get to the assembly line inside the cell that I showed you the cartoon of, and the genes have the sequences of instructions with 4 nucleic acid molecules. It's a very powerful code, much more powerful than the code that runs your cell phone or your computer, which is sitting here on my desk. And the DNA or nucleic acid or the inherited nucleic acids from your mother and father's family never leave the nucleus and the nuclear membrane. It's like the reference laboratory, reference, not laboratory, but library. And from the DNA, you get copies made that are complementary. It's called RNA. A little bit of difference in the sugar from desoxyribose to ribose sugar. And there are two different kinds of RNA. One that has instructions for the organelles on the assembly line, which is called messenger RNA. And lo and behold, part of the RNA goes to a structure inside the nucleus called the nucleolus, and it goes out and searches for the nutrient molecules that will be needed on the assembly line and bring them into the right time and place to make structure function molecules. And that's really phenomenal that this transport RNA seeks out nutrients and delivers them at the proper times to the organelles inside the cell. And of course, this cellular synthesis makes bioactive structure and function compounds that carry on the biochemistry of life and physiology. Dr. Williams, in his book, has a new approach to nutrition. And if you will notice, he has a circle, and there are trace minerals at the top. Over to the left, less important minerals. And then it's got zinc, cholesterol, fiber, omegas. And then down at the bottom, it has amino acids and vitamins. And you can see in the center, there is just a black area. Well, then he analyzed different foods. And I don't have one for aloe. It's not in his book, but this is brown rice, which is the principal food for more people on earth. And it's will contrast it with white rice that will follow this. But from that center, you see relatively amounts. You can see right quick that the manganese is very high. Down here, leucine and amino acids is high, other amino acids. But this is the pattern for the nutrients that through his analysis of biochemistry that Dr. Williams developed this way to try to inform people of the importance of nutrition. And one of the reasons I show this is because in the history of vitamin discovery that beriberi, which could be fatal, was corrected by the thiamine that is in rice bran. You have B1 vitamin and thiamine, and this is Casimir Funk, was the person from Poland that found out that this cover from the brown rice prevents and reverses beriberi. Now, this is when you make white rice, and you can notice how these different lines, the length of them is how much of it's there. It's a marked reduction. And when you take off the bran and have only white rice can lead to beriberi because you don't have the B1 thiamine. And this is unfortunate that so many people want white rice instead of brown rice, but this is some of the biochemistry work to try to get across how important nutrition was. And I'd like to end that this is the image of Dr. Roger Williams. And in his book, Nutrition Against Disease, published in 1971, in the first chapter, he points out that all his 10 plus books on nutrition. His 40 years of research can be summarized in one sentence. Quote, the human body heals itself, and nutrition provides resources to accomplish the task. This is an echo, I think, of not only he bases this on science, but in the Hebrew scriptures, Ezekiel 47:12 points out that the leaves of the trees shall be for medication, or some translations say medicine, or others say for healing, that they observe by empiric observation. So Dr. Williams spent about 40 years doing the biochemical research. I just showed you a little bit of it with the contrast of rice bran with white rice. And of course, what we're doing with the active ingredient from the aloe, simplified, is returning to the modern urban diet, because people don't have gardens and orchards anymore out back like they did in a more agrarian society. We're just restoring more normal nutrient molecules to the modern diet. And when you do this, the genes are programs to move the biochemistry and physiology to the normal zone, which the person credited with being the father of human physiology, Dr. Cellular, called this balance within the cells in the body homeostasis. So homeostasis is a normal balance of the body, and nutrition supports moving under the guidance of the genes to homeostasis. With that, I will take questions.
All right. That I think that was pretty incredible. I wanted to go back.
To nutrition. And if
Whoops.
you will
Let me
notice,
put a mute on that real quick. Dr. McDaniel, are you able to hear me okay?
yes.
Okay. This I'm going to kind of work backwards a little bit. The last thing you said about the berry, and the rice, and there were actually deaths from nutrition deficit, where people were, I guess it was receiving like white rice versus the caused fatal beriberi and finding B1 thiamine in Poland in only the rice bran. I wanted to spend a little bit more time on this, just how he really zoomed in on just this one issue to talk about. We're talking about total nutrition and increasing and bringing complete nutrition, but this is just bringing one example specifically in a situation that showed how serious this is and what a detriment lacking nutrition can be to a society. Can you kind of expand on this case a little bit for us?
Yes. I tried to cut this a little bit short where we'd have time
Yeah.
for questions and answers. And what I wanted to point out is that Dr. Williams was active in the discovery period of vitamins. For example, vitamin C, over 2 million British sailors and colonists died from scurvy, and they found out all you had to do is to daily have lemon juice or lime juice or fruit that had vitamin C in it. Well, what we're discovering is I stepped back from it, and when I was in medical school, you never heard of attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity syndrome in children, yet it's on the front pages of magazines now. You never heard of post PMS that women have. The incidence of many of your autoimmune diseases were very rare. Fact is, I remember in residency, I had a woman that had lupus, and the resident in charge of us says, be sure and present that to all the students tomorrow because you may never see another case of lupus in your career. Well, nearly everybody knows somebody with an autoimmune disease, and particularly lupus. Now, what has happened? We've plowed up our gardens, we chopped down our orchards, and there's been a commercialization of our food supply, and I call it the problems of the green harvest. When you pick fruits and vegetables when they're green to have a better shipping life and shelf life, when they're green, the principal molecule in the fruit or vegetable is chlorophyll, not these phytonutrients, not the vitamins, or not these other molecules that we're finding out now that are essential for cellular synthesis. So it's kind of like having the vitamin era expanded because we are victims of the green harvest to be able to ship from California to Texas various fruits and vegetables. Nearly everyone knows the difference in taste of vine ripened tomatoes and those that were picked green, shipped like green rocks, held in the back of the market until they're red enough to fool you, and you take them home and they're tasteless. I have sought the paper, but I've heard it, and I haven't found it, but I've heard it mentioned many times that Rutgers Laboratory, which has a very extensive nutrition department, has analyzed the juice from a vine ripened tomato and a green picked tomato, and there are over 200 nutrients that our genes call for in cellular synthesis to make proper structure and function compounds that result in homeostasis or balance within our body in the biochemistry and physiology. They're missing. Well, all we're doing with the research that I've been in since 1985 is slowly adding more and more nutrient molecules back to restore to the diet that, for example, in the Bible, the benefits they talk about in Ezekiel that the leaves of the tree shall be for medication or good health. And in Revelations 22:2, it states that the leaves of the trees shall be for the healing of the nations. The food that we have now is not the type of food they had 2,000, 5,000 years ago. Fact is, it's not the kind of food that was available even 100 years ago when nearly everybody had a garden or an orchard. And now there's a parking lot or a condo or another house where there used to be a vacant lot. And when I was a kid, nearly every block had one or two cows that were eating up and down the alley and on the vacant lots to have fresh milk from animals that were eating normal grass that has all the nutrients in it to make milk that is more viable when consumed. And that's the same thing about garden fruits and vegetables, going out there and allowing it to mature on the plant so that the plant genes can put into the fruit or vegetable the nutrients that our genes call for to make compounds that make the structure and function of our body. And I probably didn't get enough into that.
No, you had a lot of great information. We also have, you guys, you can watch any of, I have a whole playlist on my channel that where Dr. McDaniel has gone over several in different areas and different iterations of he'll focus on different areas of either the nutrition or the science or different pieces, so you can go back through and listen to those, and we'll have more of these as well. I wanted to touch on one more thing before we go. We have about 5 or 10 more minutes, but so I have a reaction typically when I take vitamin B6, I usually flush and turn bright red. And I have not had this experience with my aloe, and I know it has B6 in it. And I'm wondering if that is the way that my body is processing that. When you were explaining the sugars and the Manos, um, and how the B6 is extracted from the aloe. Could that be the way that I'm not having that kind of reaction to it? Um,
Well,
or
let me first say that what I didn't say a while ago is that we're stumbling into a continuation of the story of the importance of vitamins. We're just finding that there are other deficiencies because of the green harvest,
Mhm.
and that's we're just restoring to the diet what used to be there.
Yeah.
Now, I have a book here by Dr. Judith DeCava
Okay.
called The Real Truth About Vitamins and Antioxidants. And a good example of what you're talking about is what is commercially made available and labeled. For example, vitamin C is not what the vitamin was that was discovered back in the 1930s, because it's a very complex, it's called vitamin C complex. And the ascorbic acid is just a part of the vitamin C molecule. And that's
Oh,
true for other vitamins that are commercially made. Those that are actually in the plants are very complex, and it would be incredibly expensive for modern scientific laboratory work to try to make a vitamin just like it's made in nature, that is made to fit into receptor sites to be processed by the enzymes that are in our body. And possibly, I can't tell you for sure,
mhm.
that what you are having a reaction to is not the true vitamin that is in nature. That I keep coming back to this real important point about these 36 years that I've been focused on not only the aloe plant, but nutrition in general. Is it started out as a middle of the road scientific inquiry under the auspices of the FDA, conventional science and medicine, but it has turned into a spiritual journey because so many things that have been provided for us in nature raises the question that the only answer is that there is a creative, organizing, and designing power at work to put in the plants molecules that our genes call for in cellular synthesis. How in the world did this come about? How in the world, when one of the slides I showed you that the plans in DNA that is in every one of our cells has logic and programming that makes the Sabre system of American Airlines management of the airlines look like kindergarten scribble compared to what is in every one of your cells. Fact is, what is going on in one leaf of a tree, one blade of glass, one cell in an animal, and one cell in a human makes one wonder, how in the world could this come about? Well, there is a creative, organizing, and designing power that I can tell you is not a big man, but as you and I and anyone listening to this is living proof that something we do not understand is going on, that organize the universe, the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, and the genetics. And it's beyond our comprehension how all this came about. And it's one of the biggest questions that human beings have always been trying to answer, because it has been recognized something very important is going on. And just like the assembly line that you have there and all, uh,
Mhm.
in nature, if you just leave it alone, it doesn't get more complex. It breaks down and the energy levels deteriorate. It doesn't get more organized if you just leave it alone. And yet there is something going on that all the things they're finding in space, the more and more each month, there are publications in scientific and medical journals that validate the empiric observations that the Hebrews made in the ancient scriptures and that the Christians made in the New Testament, uh, 5 and 2,000 years ago, that you find evidence of in the papyrus uh, uh, of the Egyptians and the cuneiforms of the Babylonians, that they recognize something very important is going on. And that's what we're talking about, how it's incredible complexity of what life is, and that it's all supported by the nutrient molecules that we ingest, and we get into trouble if we don't have them in our diet. And all we've done in these last 36 years is paid attention to what people said that they had a problem, and nothing helped it until they added this natural nutrient to their body. And that's what I put in there. And the other thing that I've used to develop New Eden is every time the FDA has attacked a company with cease and desist orders, uh, I say, hey, they must have something important. And I go to the literature and look at it, and sure enough, this is an expansion of the importance in the early phases of the vitamins there, to find out that there are other nutrients that haven't been recognized that are absolutely essential to be provided in our diet for our biochemistry to properly function, to put us in the normal zone or homeostasis.
Absolutely. So we have someone in the chat that they posted a question on one of the previous videos, and has several questions, or she has several questions. I'm not sure if it's a male or female, but what you can do is use my link, and you can go and in the store, there's a place where you can use my link and go to the website. And then that way you can send them a message and ask questions. If you're purchasing something, there's a place in the comments where you can say what your deviation from abnormal is in your health condition. And Dr. McDaniel and the team will send you a publication of any studies that apply to your uh, deviation from abnormal in your health condition. I'm learning the lingo, sir.
Deviation from normal. And the question that's up here, what is the best vitamin C source?
Mhm.
It's lemon, limes, and all your citrus fruits.
Okay.
That is the best source of vitamin C. And what is sold as pharmaceutical vitamin C is just a portion of the molecule. And in fact, I'm blocking on the name of the scientist that discovered vitamin C. He published 2 papers in Nature. His second paper, he said that the natural vitamin C, only 2 milligrams, will prevent and reverse the vascular damage of scurvy. But it takes 2,000 milligrams of pharmaceutical vitamin C, which is not, it's citric acid, it's not the complex natural vitamin C. So the actual fruit is the absolute best source for vitamin C.
That's wonderful to know. Yeah. And New Eden has vitamin C, correct? I think, yeah, because aloe is high in
It
vitamin.
has some natural vitamin
It has
C.
natural vitamin C in it as well.
Vitamin C is in so many foods now that I have Well, I've been a physician over 50 years now, and I have never seen a case of scurvy. And that's true for nearly all of the basic vitamins. It's these new diseases that we're finding out by plowing up our gardens and orchards that there are other nutrients that need to be in our diet for our biochemistry and the physiology and cellular synthesis to work properly, optimally.
Okay. Well, you guys heard it here first. I have to tell you, like, I'm sleeping better. My mental clarity is better. I'm seeing changes in my diet, my skin, um, and my husband's seeing things with his recovery, with his workout. My daughter's been talking about it. We're trying to get, mom's been taking it, and she's just now recovering from a surgery. So I'm excited to see if that helps her. One of my good friends has seen tremendous help with his lungs and all kinds of things. Just so we're going to have some people on talking about some testimonials of how they've seen having complete nutrition through taking New Eden in their life. Join us, and we'll have more from Dr. McDaniel on again with us another time. Thank you for joining us again, and we will see you next time, Dr. McDaniel.
Blessings to everyone.
All right, take care.